We're getting ready to go to Bob Iaccino with Colonial Metals Group. He's also the co-founder for Path Trading Partners, and he's a co-host for the Futures Edge podcast. Bob, thank you so much for joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Matthew. How are you?
I'm great. It's Friday. A lot of news going on. Looking forward to tomorrow's 250th celebration. Your thoughts about just the fact that we have President Trump, celebrating the U.S. Army tomorrow?
I think that's fantastic. The support this president gives to the military in general and to the ground forces specifically, which is what the majority of the Army is. It's just heartwarming to see that. You hated to see what's been going on with our military, especially our veterans, but also the sort of makeup of the general troops. We don't need to go into the details. You know what they are. It's just really nice to see this sort of military focused type of administration again, because we all owe them a debt, past veterans, current people serving, whether they saw combat or not. They should always be near and dear to our hearts.
100%, I agree with you. When we look at things going on in our country and around the world, you're looking at the LA so-called protests that turned into riots, of course, and the Israeli-Iranian situation. There's just so much going on right now. When it comes to Colonial Metals Group, having a hedge against the market volatility, can you talk to us just about how people can be anchored in with something like gold and silver?
Well, when we saw what happened between Israel and Iran, and I won't go into detail because things are changing so quickly, I don't even know what happened 5 minutes ago. But when we saw that, I kept turning to my family and to friends in my neighborhood and saying, this is why you need gold. This is exactly why you need gold. These things flare up in areas where the U.S. doesn't really have control over it. And you can go as far as our border is to say that some of these things all affect your wealth. When you have a situation with a country like Iran, who not only controls about 10% of the global oil supply, but also controls the Strait of Hormuz, which is not just oil that goes through there. There's quite a bit of commerce that affects that part of the world, and then by default, through domino effect, affects the rest of the world. We're not going to have a big supply chain crisis like we did with COVID, but we could have an energy shock that pushes inflation higher again. This is why I'm always pointing to gold as the one thing you can do to protect your wealth and sleep at night, the wealth you've made that you want to put aside for your family, for your descendants, and that you actually want to make sure is whole. You look at gold over the last 2 years, up 80%. Over the last 5 years, 92%. Over the last 10 years, 183%. I've had financial advisors say to me, well, gold doesn't really do anything. It doesn't produce anything. It doesn't have a yield that you get paid on. Gold is actually legal tender here in Florida, where I'm speaking to you now, thanks to the legislation that was just passed. And when you look at those performance numbers that I just gave you, people who are not adding gold to their portfolio or not calling Colonial Metals and saying, hey, can you help me switch over to a self-directed IRA so that I can actually add gold and be protected? I'm not quite sure what they're thinking, to be honest.
Yeah, when I look at it, I looked on the website yesterday. I was doing a little bit more research on it, and I saw that you could preserve your purchasing power, protect your life's work, tangible security you own and control, the benefits of owning a gold IRA and all that. Can you explain some of what I just said there? Because I'm not an economist. I'll be honest about that one.
Well, I'm a strategist, not an economist, but I think strategists, because we've actually put our money on the line over our careers, are better than economists. Here's what I'll tell you about it. The dollar itself might look good against the euro. It might look good against the yen, but we live in the real world, Matthew, and we're looking at the dollar having lost 26% of its purchasing power just since 2020. And that doesn't really include inflation. A lot of people think that's the same thing, and it's not. When the government prints money and it doesn't result in higher prices, which happened for 10 of the last 15 years, with President Trump in office as well, they were still just finishing that money printing, that building of the supply of dollars that are out there. And just like anything else, when there's a larger supply, the value of that thing, whatever it is, goes down. The devaluation of your dollar means that in 2020, let's call it prior to COVID, let's go 2019, when you went out and bought a washing machine, if you go to buy one now, it's 26% more, and then add inflation on top of that, because your dollar actually loses value. And what gold does is it protects the value of that dollar, because gold rallying on a weaker dollar or a devalued dollar is not a bug. It's a feature of having gold in your 401k and in your IRA. And you can only do that in a self-directed 401k and a self-directed IRA, because the people who are charging you fees are not going to do that for you. The people who are charging you quarterly fees on rebalancing your assets, they're not going to do that for you. Only a place like Colonial Meadows will. So that's why I represent them. That's why I enjoy being on these kinds of interviews and talking about gold.
Well, if we break it down to dollars and cents, if someone is watching this and they say, well, I only have $100 in my savings, or if somebody's watching and they say, I've got $20,000 in my savings, what kind of numbers are we talking about here that we really should start looking over toward Colonial Metals Group?
Well, it's a real simple thing. If you only had $100 in 2019, you had 125. Now, I understand it's not the amount of dollars in your hand, but that's what I mean about the value of the dollar. It actually decreased by 26%. So let's make it more 126 rather than 125. So if you have small amounts, silver is only trading somewhere in this $26, $27 an ounce range. Silver is another way to protect yourself. And silver has a second benefit in that it's also an industrial metal. So if the economy starts to pick up and gold starts to taper off in terms of the gains that it's had, silver will benefit from that. So you're not talking about just gold. You're not talking about something where you're just depending on the price of the asset to appreciate. Silver and gold protect their own value just by way of them having 5,000 years of history. The first coins were minted in Turkey in 700 BC. We're talking BC.
Wow.
That's how long gold has been valuable, and you just can't break a track record like that.
So the next step for people, if they're interested right now, is going to the website, right? freegoldguide.com,
Yeah.
getting the info kit, and then making a phone call to you as well, or just researching online and getting that info kit, right?
Yeah, I think you should call. That's just my own personal opinion, because part of the reason that I chose Colonial Metals Group to work with is who they are. I mean, I've been doing this for 32 years, almost 32 years now. It's going to be 32 years in September. And when I've been around every type of market watcher, trader, investor, investment advisor, I've run a hedge fund. I've been around all of them, and not a lot of them are kind and empathetic and are all about educating you. And CMG is. And that's what I really liked about them. You can place a phone call to them, or you can use the link to get some information and then place a phone call with a little bit of education on your own. They'll take that next step for you. They'll take you to that next point, and you won't be pressured. They'll explain it to you, and they'll say, well, whatever decision you make now, we'll honor. But I think the case for it is almost unavoidable, that you have to have some gold and some form of precious metals in your IRA, self-directed, of course.
That sounds like a plan. I mean, a lot of people listening and understanding it, that makes sense right there. Bob Iaccino with Colonial Metals Group, also the co-founder of Path Trading Partners and co-host of the Futures Edge podcast. Bob, thank you again for joining us on Right Side. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
It's good to see you, man. Good to be here.
You too, Bob. Thank you, sir.